Any plans for this evening? Perhaps a game night?
Game over, man! It's game over!
Shut up. Play the game. Play it from your heart.
26 years ago, we started playing a little game. Now, we're all gonna sit down, we're gonna finish it.
And may the odds be ever in your favor.
And here we go.
Hey folks, welcome to Dice Camera Action, a mashup podcast about board games and movies where cardboard meets a silver screen. Each episode we review a board game, and if you're a cinephile, you could stick around for an in-depth discussion about a movie with a similar theme. I'm Matt Cousineau, and with me today is a special guest host. He's a fellow Canadian and incredibly successful board game designer whose works include Seven Summits, Paint the Roses, Escape the Castle, Batman: The Dark Knight Returns, and the modern classic Sagrada. He spent years making smart systems that reward good decisions, which is ironic because, like me, he's also a big Blue Jays fan, and we are permanently trauma bonded now by how painfully close we came to winning the World Series last year. Game design legend, Canadian pride, and shared baseball heartbreak. Daryl Andrews, welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you on.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
Cool. This is the first time we get to actually chat. We've been Facebook friends just from being in the board game design community for a while, and I've seen a lot of your travels and when you go to cons and when you go to Blue Jays games in the playoffs, and I'm super jealous. All that. I've seen you tons online, but we've never actually had a chance to sit down and talk. So really looking forward to this.
Looking in a mirror, buddy.
Yeah, it's super funny. We're both kind of heavier set white dudes with beards, glasses, and a white hat. We're also wearing a black t-shirt with red kind of accents on the front. So it's kind of funny. We sort of look very similar here. Not all for the American audience that might be watching the video. Not all Canadian dudes look like this. Just for the record.
No, but you're right. We have shared quite a year. It's been a roller coaster between everything, and I was real blessed. I got to go to some games, and thankfully, because of just some really good friends and some connections over the years. A weird fun fact. I was named Canada's biggest baseball fan back in 2013.
No way. How did that happen?
It was kind of like a reality show. They actually picked the biggest baseball fan from 16 nations, all the nations that were in the World Baseball Classic.
Cool.
And they flew us into New York, and we watched all the games together and did a bunch of social media things for the World Baseball Classic. And from that experience, I got to meet Cal Ripken and Tommy Lasorda and Candy Maldonado.
Yeah.
It was an insane experience, and obviously I was a big baseball fan before that, but that was quite a unique and special experience. And it's wild to think that was 13 years ago, but because of some of those relationships, I've kept in touch. And so, for instance, when the Blue Jays had World Series opportunities, I reached out to the project manager, and he managed to get me tickets for Game 6 and Game 7. And,
against the Yankees, right?
And I got to go to the Yankees for Games 4 and 5, I think it was.
And you went to the Dodgers ones too.
And I went to the Dodgers Game 6 and 7.
Oh my God, that's amazing, dude.
It was insane. And it was only possible because I got these tickets. They were in the nosebleeds, and who cares? I just stood for the whole game and never went up to my nosebleed seats that were the top of the 500 level.
Yeah, just being in the building is unreal.
I just wanted to be in the building. And the wildest part about it was that I got to pay face value, just the regular price. Because for anyone who knows, unfortunately, tickets become impossible to get because they're so expensive and people flip them. And yet I, paid a normal price for a ticket for the playoffs because I was buying them from MLB, and MLB employees can't make profit off of the ticket.
Yeah, that makes sense. Very cool.
That was wild. It was a crazy feeling. Got to experience the highs and lows. And, Yankee Stadium was quite an aggressive environment. I even saw Blue Jays fans that actually hid like their allegiance really won. I was not one of those people, but
that image of IKF sliding into home plate and being out by like mere inches is going to haunt me for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Oh, it was just a collision of a bunch of, you don't even have to be a baseball fan to just understand the roller coaster of emotions. No matter what, wherever I go, someone says, "Oh, where are you from?" And I say Toronto, and their immediate response is, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I was cheering." No matter where.
It's unbelievable the amount of little tiny things that had to go wrong for the Jays not to win. That is unbelievable. Like I can't even think about it because it just makes me mad. But it's wild. Very cool. I want to take a quick moment to shout out our sponsor, BoardGameBliss.com, which is honestly where I've been buying games for years. This isn't some random ad read. They're literally the only people I reached out to because I already love what they do, and I was relieved when they said yes so I could be fully genuine when endorsing them. They've got a huge inventory of games and are always super competitive price-wise, which is important to me. At Board Game Bliss, we believe in the magic of play. Board games spark joy, forge connections, and create unbelievable moments. We source exceptional titles from around the globe, so your table always has something exciting to offer. Whether you're just starting out or you're a seasoned pro, there's always a new favorite waiting to be found. Go to BoardGameBliss.com and find out why they're my personal favorite place to buy board games. Okay, so today on the episode, we're going to be having some shout-outs as usual. So we're going to talk about a couple of games and movies or other media that we've been taking in. We're going to review Moon Colony Bloodbath, which is a 2025 release, and then we'll jump into a conversation about Mickey 17, the latest Bong Joon-ho movie, who recently won an Oscar for Parasite. So before we get into all that, Daryl, I want to give you an opportunity to kind of plug yourself, talk maybe about any upcoming games that you've got going on, any Kickstarters coming up, anything you got going on that you basically want to let people know about.
Yeah, absolutely. Thankfully, it's going to be a real active year this year for me. And, the last few years, with tariffs and all those kind of weird things, there's been a bunch of delays, but that just meant they kind of started to pile up. And so they're going to start trickling out. So anything from Arcane Wonders has a game of mine called Ley Lines that has been a number of years in the making. It's a co-design with Wolfgang Kramer, and it's a remake of an old early 80s Spiel des Jahres winner called Oxel, which I'm sure I'm pronouncing poorly. It's German. It basically translates to trucking, and it was a pickup and delivery game that we're really proud to have brought back to the market and reimagined it with a beautiful new theme of kind of you're running around the forest and following the ley lines and delivering little things to creatures in the forest, and kind of recipe building what you need. The board is designed in the round, and a little Easter egg that I like to tell people is if you look for the tailors, which is you're delivering some stuff to get clothes delivered, the tailor is actually my dog. So you can see a little Westie on the art, and the reason it was assigned to the tailors is my very close family members, my aunt and uncle, who were kind of like another set of parents to me. Their last name was the Taylors, so
cool.
That was a little Easter egg there for a game to look out for that has kind of that family strategy weight. The hope is it's kind of almost like a classic Days of Wonder kind of feel. So excited about that.
Look, you're just casually name dropping Wolfgang Kramer like it's no big deal.
Right? It's pretty wild. You can pitch me. Cool. We have a few games coming out. Actually, also this year we'll have a remake of Hacienda and a remake of Gulu Gulu. Both of those should be hitting this year, kind of around the world. It's wild. They say never meet your heroes, but he is legitimately one of the kindest, most experienced game designers anyone could meet. And him and his wife are seriously precious. I mean, if I if I made a Mount Rushmore of game designers, he'd be the easiest first decision to put on there. Yeah, so there's those games coming up. The latter two, Hacienda and Gulu are going to come out from Pandasaurus. What other things? I just had a Kickstarter with Open Owl Games with their Mythwind series. Not to be confused with, I have designed a game called Mistwind for a different publisher, but Mythwind from Open Owl Games has the opportunity. They already made, I believe, 5 characters for the game. It's the kind of game that you can play solo and really kind of like this cozy genre of playing a character and leveling them up, exploring the whole world through the eyes of a character. It's the first time I've gotten to work on a game like that, and I worked with Jenna Beasley, a first-time designer who has a great channel called the Board Game Garden. We created a character for it called the Herbalist. And so you can it's got a little bit of like kind of witchy vibes of collecting all the little plants in the forest and turning them into different things. And then at the same time, the Kickstarter did another character called the Shepherd by Nikki Valens, who's an incredibly talented designer and was really great at creating, wonderful characters. When I met the owner and he asked me to do a game, I suggested Nikki, and they were like, "Oh, that's actually someone we would like, but we don't have a contact." I chased them down, and then I also suggested, Jenna loves the game system and had done a lot of coverage when it came to teach videos and such, and she was in my game group. I said, "Well, would you also be open to me co-designing this with Jenna?" And they were really excited about both Nikki and Jenna being involved, and so the 3 of us made a couple characters that have just successfully kickstarted. So that's another exciting project that, I can't wait for it to be fulfilled and people to be able to experience those. And one of the biggest ones that I got to give a plug out for because it helps me live is Sagrada.
You have something new coming out for that, right?
Yeah, so it should be hitting stores in early February, and it is a re-release, a reimagined, beautiful new version of Sagrada, version 2.0.
Yeah, I saw the art. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, the art is incredible. We have Kwangchai Mora, who's one of my favorite artists, Bridget Indica that did the graphic design and layout. The 2 of them have done a lot of great stuff together. So we polished up a few, rough edges, some rules, especially the solo play, and some of the secret scoring and stuff like that. But beyond that, it's just a chance to kind of give everything a refresh. We have designed some new stuff that's not in the base game, but will be coming soon. And then a bunch of the promos and different things that were hard to get, we're also bringing back into the game. So the whole idea or the goal is that we can put a bunch of the expansions and promos and everything together with new art so that all the fans can get it. And if you're new to it and you can't track down that old stuff, now you can. So that's one of our biggest goals with that. You don't have to buy it if you already have the game, but I love it so much more. Maybe it's a chance to give away the copy you have and update it with a new version for yourself.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks for sharing all that. All right. So let's move into our shoutouts.
And stop shouting! I'm not deaf!
So I'll talk about a movie that I watched. It's a documentary from this year called Secret Mall Apartment. Have you heard of this at all?
I have.
You have? Okay, you haven't watched it? You should check it out. It's not like mind-blowingly fantastic, but the concept, the idea, what they go through is interesting, and the characters are really cool and interesting. And so basically the story is that in, I want to say the early 90s, Providence, Rhode Island had this huge mall project that they created in order to kind of breathe life into that city.
Sure.
I guess it was kind of in an economic downturn. And as malls were becoming more a thing in the late 80s, early 90s, they built the Providence Place Mall, I think it was called.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, so they built this huge mall. It was the mall itself was sort of in like 2 or 3 different shapes. So there was one kind of half circular area that has like the parking and some stores, and then there was more of a rectangular. But as you know, if the shapes that are different shapes don't fit together,
Yeah,
and that
totally.
creates kind of like some dead space, right?
Yeah.
And so these artists, who the leader of which his name was Mike, he had the history of doing these like art installations, where they would put like mannequins, like suspend a bunch of mannequins in a tunnel, and it was like this cool experience to walk through or whatever, for example, right? So he would do these art installations, and so just because he's that type of person, he was kind of exploring the mall and found this like crevice and just went to go check it out. And he ends up going down in between the different sides of the building and in the bones of the building, and finds this wide open space. I think it was 700 or 800 square feet, so not massive, but like an area that is completely
a big nothing.
yeah, exactly. It's completely nothing, just dead space, brick walls, cement floor, and like it was clear that nobody had been there in the years since the mall had been created, and nobody was probably going to find it unless there was some super extenuating circumstances. So he and a handful of friends decided that they were going to like furnish this place and hang out. And that eventually morphed into what Mike sort of called an art project, where he would try to turn this place into an actual apartment and live there,
Right.
and see how long he could get away with it. And he primarily lived there, and there was a few 2 or 3 others that were there a lot, but basically this group of people lived there for 4 years.
Whoa.
They got to the point where they like got power in there. They had their television in there. They had couches, a dining area, a big hutch, storage, a couple of beds and a pull-out sofa and like all these things. And it felt like a nice little apartment,
Right.
They even went to the lengths of building a wall, because there was one section of it that had like a drop off and it wasn't super safe or whatever. And they wanted to kind of like close it in to make it feel like more of an apartment. And so they purchased cinder blocks, and over the course of I don't know how many days, with their little cars, would like hand bomb these cinder blocks in and build a wall and install a door and a lock and the whole 9 yards. So yeah, just a really interesting little documentary that kind of entertaining. It's not like this fantastic story or whatever, but it is interesting. And the people involved.
I just saw a trailer for it, so I've been intrigued.
Okay.
I definitely want to check that out. I'm a big documentary fan.
Yeah, I think it was on Netflix, so super easy to access too. So
okay, I know for myself, one documentary this last year that I really enjoyed, I don't know if you've seen it, was the John Candy documentary.
No.
It was titled "I Like Me," and and it was a great a great opportunity to hear the backstory of a legend, especially in Canada, of someone that I don't know about you, but for me, like I was always proud to see him pop up, and it kind of made it feel like anything was possible, like that. Seeing an example of someone who, he wasn't like the stud, the leading,
seemed like an everyday guy,
Yeah, he just was an average looking dude that was funny and heartfelt, and things just always felt like there was a lot of authenticity, a lot of respect. It was fun to see like interviews of people like Macaulay Culkin talking about how, interacting with him on like Uncle Buck, and how like behind the scenes, John was like cared about him as a person and not just, the job. And so hearing that, and then it's there's some low points because you find out about some of the pressures and depression and things that John Candy went through, and so it just it was just a real emotional roller coaster of hearing the highs and lows that someone went through. That a lot of the times I only got to appreciate the spoils of his humor and get a more well-rounded view of who he is and the ups and downs. He wasn't just the funny guy, and he wasn't just even a one-dimensional person that we often think of others when we only see the limelight. But he had passions, and he had journeys that worked out and didn't. He was an Argonauts owner, and so that was kind of fun to see part of that storyline and things like that. So I highly recommend it. It's a tearjerker, but it's a good one.
Cool. Yeah, I should really watch it. I've always been a fan of that guy, and he's a Canadian icon, a Canadian legend, right? And you could really, like, in movies like Uncle Buck or Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, or even Home Alone, you could tell through his performance, like, when that guy did a scene where he was supposed to have heart and empathy or sympathy, like, you could tell that was just him, for whatever reason. Some people, not that they come off fake, other actors, but for some reason there was just an extra layer of authenticity to those performances. Big fan of that guy. I definitely need to catch up with that documentary. In terms of a game that I've been playing a ton lately with my boys, Charlie and Remy, who are 6 and 9, is 12 Rivers. Have you had a chance to play that one?
The physicality of it alone caught my eye, and I was a little worried that it was just a gimmick.
Yes, every time.
Yeah.
Every time I see a game with like a physical toy factor, I'm always like, is it just a gimmick? And honestly, it is just a gimmick. And the reason I say it that way is because it's completely unnecessary. Like, for it to be marbles, going like physically down a path is not necessary, but it is cool, and it just adds a little extra toy factor to the game. But the game itself stands on its own, and it doesn't need that gimmick or that toy factor to be good. I'd say it's good, not great, but I have a really good time with it, and it's charming. The art, the look of it, the table presence is really charming. And there's a little bit of crunch to it in terms of like decision making. And those who listen to the podcast on a regular basis know that some sort of player interaction is big points for me. And I really enjoy the moments where, like, I need a specific colored marble, and I, need to like go ahead of somebody else to try to take that marble, or go to the topmost space to guarantee that I get it. And mathing the odds out of, like, if I go down here, what are the odds that I can get it? You can take a look at what your opponents are looking for in terms of colors. There's just lots of like, I guess it's very flexible in that, like, my 6-year-old can play and just go for the colors that he wants and just have fun, and it doesn't really matter that much. Meanwhile, I'm playing against him, and I'm trying to min-max and really trying to make the decisions to try to get as many points as possible. And we could both enjoy ourselves in playing the same game, kind of thing. So 12 Rivers definitely exceeded my expectations, especially with the fact that, like, as you said, is like, is it just a gimmick or is it more? It's definitely more. So definitely check out 12 Rivers if it look into it and more into the mechanisms, and if it seems like it's something you'd like, it's definitely way more than just the gimmick of the marbles moving down the river.
And they managed to get the price point down a bit. The original first printing was really expensive, and so I was more skeptical. But now that they've got it in retail, it's not it's not cheap, but it's at least you're not paying a ton extra for the gimmick. So I think that helps draw people's eye and interest to give it a try.
Yeah, I know some of the other regular hosts on the podcast, want to review it, so we may end up reviewing it at some point. So we'll see if that happens. But 12 Rivers. You got a game you've been playing lately, Daryl?
Yeah, I only got to play it twice so far, but I've really enjoyed both plays. It's from a designer that has been a favorite over the years. and I feel like has not hit it out of the park as much lately. And that is Druids of Adora from Stefan Feld.
Okay.
I feel like it's under the radar for the first time ever. I feel like Felds usually get all the love and attention. And yet this one's beautiful and it's really great. It gives me, it's not the same game in any way, but it gives me the Castles of Burgundy vibes, which I don't say lightly. That is one of my all-time favorite games. And that is my favorite Stefan Feld game. And for the first time in a while, I was like, oh yeah, there's so many paths. There's so many things that I could try, which Stefan Feld's kind of famous for. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Maybe it's just stock levels or whatnot, but I just feel like it hasn't gotten much attention. It did come out around Essen time, and was even in stores slightly before Essen, I believe. But yeah, and it's with Alea, I believe, which is, one of those classic Euro game, medium weights. And it has dice manipulation, which I'm a big fan of. And, but dice mitigation. And yeah, I would just say, if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's, the box weighs a ton, so you're going to get a lot of value out of that box.
Cool. Yeah. I just checked Board Game Bliss, and they have it on pre-order right now. So I assume it's coming out, fairly soon.
Yeah, it must be coming out soon. I think it had like an initial trickle out, but not a major release. So that's why I say like the distribution side of it might be weird. I played it at a friend's place in the US. And I played it, almost back to back because I liked it so much. I don't own it yet, but it'll be when I see it in my local game store, I will be picking that up or ordering it from Bosco at Board Game Bliss, because I love the Bliss, and anytime I can clump a bunch of games together and get that free shipping, I'm gonna start doing that.
For sure. Very cool. Okay, so those are our shout outs. And I guess we'll move into our main board game review, which is Moon Colony Bloodbath. Do bad decisions make you lean in closer? Does the phrase, "this will only get worse," excite you a little? Do you ever watch a situation start small, like a single fire alarm goes off in a shiny new moon colony, and think, that's fine, somebody's got it under control, only to see it spread to 3 rooms, knock out the power, trigger the life support systems, and somehow release a pack of panicked robots into the hallways? And then, just when you think it can't get any worse, the oxygen recycler explodes, the hydroponic tank starts leaking, and the colony's AI thinks this would be a great time to play interpretive jazz. As you just sit there absolutely riveted because it's horrific, spectacular, and you just can't look away. Moon Colony Bloodbath begins by letting everyone build a sensible, efficient lunar operation. You construct buildings, mine for resources, feed your colonists, and make plans to feel smart, intentional, and deeply responsible. This is a lie the game tells you. Every round introduces new problems: fires, depressurizations, robot nonsense, morale failure, and your once elegant system quickly becomes a fragile house of vacuum-exposed cards. You're not trying to make things work, you're trying to make them fail slower than everybody else. It's a competitive game about surviving escalating disasters, adapting to chaos, and discovering that every clever plan you make is really just setting up a more spectacular collapse later. After all, it's called Moon Colony Bloodbath for a reason. Daryl, you've probably played this more than me. You've already told me it's one of your favorite games of the year. So I guess I'll go into the kind of publishing details really quickly but I'll get you to do maybe a quick description of more of the mechanics of how the game goes. So Moon Colony Bloodbath, published in 2025 by Rio Grande Games, designed by Donald X. Vaxarino, I believe is or
I say
Vacarino,
but I'm not a good judge of how to pronounce things.
Fair enough. Art by Franz Vowinkle. Plays 1 to 5 players in 40 to 90 minutes. Has a BGG weight of 2.17 and a BGG rating of 7.5. So, Daryl, why don't you give us a little bit of a mechanical breakdown of how the game works?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm not the best at using fancy words, but I'll describe kind of how it feels.
We are simple people here at Dice Camera Action. No problem.
I love that, and people feel free if you got nice large vocabularies to share the right way to say it and comment and come at me.
I'll help you out.
I welcome it, but the main thing is that you are working off of one common deck that affects everyone. And at the beginning, life feels great. You have gotten to the moon. You have food. You have currency. You don't understand that things could turn bad. Life feels great. And so as you start flipping cards and it affects everyone around the table, you start building rooms, buildings, features on your moon colony. And most of the time, you're actually kind of building a bit of an engine. You feel good. This combos with that. And you start making more food and more resources, money. And it legitimately always feels, even though I know what's coming, the bloodbath is coming, I always think, well, maybe this is the game everything goes right. and so you start building up a bunch of cool cards that cost whatever. And part of why you need to do that, but you're not really thinking about it, is that you need some collateral. You need people that eventually, when things need to knock down and fall and collapse, you will have people running out of these buildings because the loser or losers of the game will be the people that run out of everything. So someone will go bankrupt of all their resources and all of their people. And so there feels like a round or so of buildup. And then all of a sudden, like that description you read, Matt, there's little cracks, little moments that start going like, oh, that sucks. I lose a couple of this. I lose a couple of that. But it snowballs. It starts to just accelerate on you with little AI robots and all this that are just a little annoying. It's like, oh, and when you lose this, you also lose this now. And so as that kind of like deck builder, but a common deck builder kind of flows through and it recycles every time. And you have basically 4 cards in that deck that let you do the main actions. And so whenever it kind of gives the indicator of doing an action, of build a card or farm or etc., you have to choose which of those actions you want to do. And then similarly, you have some special cards that you can get mixed into the common deck. And that the fun part about those cards is they only help you. So whenever that card flips out that says, oh, and player green gets 3 extra food, though you want to kind of try to fill the deck with as many of those little moments because they're going to help you persevere. And that's it. Like you go, like I said, 5-10 minutes on a ride up the roller coaster, and then it's all downhill from there.
That's right. Yeah, you get to build up a little bit and build a little bit of an engine and feel good about yourself just long enough to see it all crash down. And that's exactly what this game is. It is a game where I believe right in the description it says something like it's an engine building, engine deconstruction deck. But you just got to try to keep your engine running just long enough to outpace your opponents. And that shared deck that you're talking about, every round we add bad things to it. And we're trying ourselves, the players, to inject a couple of good things in there now and then. But every round, at the beginning of each round, once we've gone through that, like I think it's 10 card deck, you start to add robots, and robots always just run amok and cause problems and go rogue. And then you can add catastrophes and add all kinds of things, right? And by the time you're into your 3rd round, like most of the cards are bad. So it's like lose X amount of colonists, and then lose X amount of money. You got to pay 1 food for every building you have. So then you're like getting rid of your food. And if you can't do that, well, then you lose colonists. And you just continue to lose and lose and lose. And mechanically, the way the game works is as soon as somebody runs out of colonists, that triggers the end game. And then the game ends immediately, and whoever has the most colonists at that point wins. So there is sort of player elimination, but the game ends immediately at that point. So there's not really any rounds are moving forward without all the players, which I appreciate. But one of the things I thought was sort of clever about this is that there is this, you get a hand of cards at the beginning of the game, and they're all buildings that you can construct. And the building might say, you pay $4 million for this building. And then it might say every time that you farm, also gain 2 colonists. Or it might say every time that you gain colonists, also gain 2 food. Or it might say every time, or you have to feed 1 less colonist based on how many buildings you have when that card comes up in the deck. So you're constantly trying to get synergy within these cards. And the other neat thing about these cards, these buildings, is that in the top right corner, there's a little number, and that represents how many colonists live or reside, or that building represents. And you also have like a pool of colonists, like tokens, right? And if you ever run out of those tokens, you're going to look at your buildings, and let's say you have 3 buildings out. One of them has a little 5 in the corner for the colonists. One of them has a 10, and then one of them has a 4. Well, if I have to lose 4 colonists right now, I have to choose which of my buildings I'm going to destroy to basically collect the colonists from in that building in order to pay the amount of colonists that I'm losing. Hopefully that sentence made sense.
Yeah. No,
but basically I can cash in a building for colonists and lose my colonists that way. But now I've got less buildings and less colonists, and my engine's being deconstructed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have to kill your darlings. You're constantly being told, like, you can't have it all anymore. So which one of these things do you want to lose but try to keep surviving and outpace your competition? And one of the things I really love about that decision, and just the whole game in general, is it doesn't become a big math fest at the end of the game. Instead, it's pretty clean and pretty clear that when that end trigger happens where one person goes bust, or more, because more than one person can bust on that last turn, then you just right at the end kind of look around and go like, who's got the most left? And so you're not, it is this race, but it is very clean, very definitive, who is kind of like the winner or winners. I even sometimes just say like, hey, if you made it, maybe you can
Congratulations.
But, you survived. But it felt fresh. It felt different from a lot of games. There's something just like really funny about this idea of these quirky, like the themes on it of little robots, like kind of like they sound like they're trying to be helpful, but they're constantly getting in the way and constantly doing little mistakes. It just like the game walks a really fine line of humor on kind of a really dark topic. And I think that's harder to do than most people realize. Like it just pulls it off. And it could have very easily just been seen as morbid or dark. And yet the game does a great job of getting everyone in it. The table talk is really fun. People start always like talking about like, oh, I had to blow like my transformer or my hotel and so like just it gets everyone into a real fun mood.
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head there. It is funny. And I think more than anything, this game's pacing is perfect for what it's doing. It does not, you like, by the time bad things starts happening, it feels like you're just getting started. Like you really barely had a chance to do anything. And so like, and that's when things start to go bad a little bit, and you hope that your engine can just survive long enough to like build up some money and build up more colonists and build up some food and get yourself in a situation where you can survive a little bit longer, right? But the problem with that is that you run out of colonists so quickly that you have really tough decisions to make when it comes to starting to deconstruct your engine, because that's when you start to deconstruct your engine and remove your buildings from your tableau. That's the point where you're like, I just need to decide right now if I'm going to lose my mine, which gives me free money every time X happens, and I'm short on money. Or I could get rid of my apple orchard. But now I'm not gonna be able to feed my colonists every time that I have to do that each round. So you have to kind of decide, and I have no food left either. Like I got no money, I got no food, and I have to like destroy one of these things that gets me those things. And you have those tough decisions to make. But yeah, I think the pacing is just perfect. I think the length of the game is just perfect, especially for me, because it's a situation where the game doesn't really have any player interaction between like my colony and your colony and what you've got going on. It's just a matter of trying to survive long enough. But the game is funny enough and weird enough and unique enough that you're constantly like jabbing each other, right? You're like pouring salt in the wound when you can to your opponents and laughing at each other and poking fun at each other. And I think that's part of the intention of the design of this game. It's really unique, right? Like I don't think I've ever played a game anywhere near this style before.
Yeah, it's unique. It at a time when so many games feel kind of the same. The box says 45 to 90, but I never had a game go over an hour. So, like you said, that pacing, it doesn't outstay its welcome. 100%. It feels like I have interesting decisions the whole time, and then it all of a sudden is done, and I'm like, whoa, okay, what just happened?
I think somebody else mentioned Moon Colony Bloodbath on the podcast like a year ago, because I played it for the first time at Nerdfest almost a year ago, right. Because it's coming up again in a month or so. And I had played it for the first time there, and then I played it again at home with a friend a couple weeks later. So I played it twice in a pretty short period of time, about a year ago. And my opinion at the time was sort of like, I guess, and this is something you have to go in being prepared for. And I don't think I was. I don't think I knew anything about what the gameplay was like. And I sit down and I feel like I'm getting punched in the gut and in the face for 45 minutes. And I'm like, where's the fun here? I was a little bit frustrated the first time I played. And then the second time I played, I understood it a little bit more and I was like ready for it. And I'm like, okay, it's just like, let's just have some fun and some silliness and try to survive, And then I came out of that game thinking like, okay, it's a fun activity and it feels like a game that happens to you as opposed to a game that you're playing. And then I haven't played it since, because it kind of fell into the category of like, if somebody else wants to play it, sure, I'm down. Like I'll play games. It's fun. Like I'll have a good time. And plus this time around, I know what to expect. And so, if anybody was like, Matt, I want to play Moon. Yeah, let's do it. It'll be fun. But I didn't like rush out to buy it, and I wasn't going to be the one to be like, let's play this game. And then you recommended playing this game because we connected and we're like, let's get you on the podcast. What are some games? And then you mentioned this one, and I had a few plays under my belt, and a good friend of mine has it. So I'm like, I'm perfect. I'll borrow it from my buddy, and I'll play it a couple of times, and I'll refresh myself and go in with the right intention and the right kind of expectations, and then, give it another shot. And so I did that, and I definitely appreciate the game a lot more now than I did a couple of weeks ago before I started kind of playing it again. And so I'm now have a way, at the time I probably wouldn't have, like I said, purchased it, but now I'm like considering it because like the last couple of times I played, going in with the right expectations and playing with the right group too. I think it's the type of game.
It is group dependent, and I think you're right. Like expectations matter.
Yes.
It doesn't communicate because of its uniqueness. It's hard to know what you're getting into. But I know for myself, and it sounds similar to your experience, that the people that I played with and the expectation going into it when I did play it mattered a lot. And so, for instance, for me, I had a few people that, we don't mind even like aggressive games or attacking games or things like that. And so they were like, it's going to be like that, but we're all getting attacked. And so that kind of like set the tone for me. And I get, especially for people that are, I don't like confrontation, or I don't like take that, it might be not your cup of tea. But I think there is also something to be said about, as long as you know what you're going into, you're all suffering together. And there
That's
is
right.
this level of like, almost like bingo, of like you're calling it out. But instead of it being like, yay, 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 it's, oh no, oh no, oh no.
Yeah.
And so I think more and more, I'm not looking for like a game that's just like a game that I already have. I own too many games already that I want to get back on the shelf. But when a game feels unique or gives me a different story or a different moment, then that really kind of stands out or catches my eye.
Yeah. I like weird games. I like games that are going to like, make me look at it sideways and go like, what? How does this, I don't, and then you have to puzzle it out and figure it out and be like, oh, that's neat. That's a neat system, or that's a neat, mechanism I've never seen before. This game definitely does that. And it's funny because like I designed a game that has a lot of take that in it. And
Right.
one of the big things that I've kind of learned from talking to people about my game and pitching my game and talking, and getting feedback for my game is that a lot of people don't mind take that so much, as long as you're not, and this is something that I've heard over and over and over again, as long as you're not tearing down something that I've been working on for rounds and rounds, right?
Yeah.
And
If you're
that's,
invested.
yeah, like I've been working on this thing and I've been trying to make it work, and I'm finally about to get there and somebody comes over and kicks my sandcastle down. Those are the types of things that a lot of people are like, stay away from that. That's the kind of thing that I don't want to do. And this game is only that.
Yeah. Yeah.
This game is that from the get-go. It's just like you
the
try to
rules,
build
boys.
something and they're just going to come over and kick your sandcastle down over and over again. So it's definitely something you have to go in with the right mindset and the right expectations. And if you do that and you could just laugh at each other's sandcastles being kicked down over and over again, there's a lot of fun to be had here for sure.
Absolutely. It's funny because I just played an import game. I don't know. It was probably pretty hard to get last week, called Warren Right 2. And it looks like World War II. It's quite a confusing title, actually, but it's an import, and maybe it's kind of lost in translation. But in that game, it's a war game where you're simultaneously programming, and you can get completely wiped off the map on turn one. And so I originally thought going into it like, oh, this is going to be silly and fun. And then, like you're describing, like if you just get crushed, that thing that you really were counting on, it just sucked the life out of this game. And I'm sorry for the makers of that game, but it really fell flat with the people that I was playing with because of that. Now, we played a very simple version. There's advanced rules with cards and all kinds of things. And I'm guessing that if we played it with the cards and the advanced rules, it would fix some of that. But like you said, when a game, feels like it's now bullying you or picking on you, usually that's a sign that it's not going to work out. But somehow this game just kind of walks that fine line of it wallops us all, and then we are kind of like trauma bonded together.
Yeah, exactly.
As we go through it. It's far from a perfect game, and I think sometimes when people try to be unique, there's trade-offs and things that don't work out. So things like that might be a turnoff for some people. Another turnoff for me personally was I knew what kind of art style they were going for, but it's not great. The art has room for improvement. Let's put it that way. And so I think the cover even might not draw too many people in the store to like rip it off the shelf. It's not like this beautiful, happy-go-lucky, animal, cute animals type vibe. It's got its own particular
I think
style.
it didn't go like it went for like a 50s almost propaganda style art.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it didn't go far enough in either direction. Like it didn't go like beautiful, pretty, whatever, and it didn't go funny either. I feel like it's the perfect game to like go funny. Like,
Yeah.
and I think it tried but didn't succeed, or maybe it didn't even try. Like, I feel like it tried with the theme, obviously, and even all of the flavor text and all of the like theming on the cards and stuff is like funny, but the art is not. I feel like you could easily have like, you could even go like a little bit more gruesome, right? If you wanted to.
Yeah.
But they kind of didn't go in either direction far enough. I'm not sure what they were going for, but yeah, I think I agree. The graphic design works. It's fully functional. Everything makes a ton of sense. So it's very functional in that way. But it's not nice to look at, really. It doesn't have like table presence, or like, you know, if I saw this on a table at a con, I wouldn't look twice. I'd just be like, like
the art is not doing it. I mean, if you listen to the response and the experience, like, it draws me in. But once I look at it, I kind of go, eh. Like, I literally would be kind of like, oh, next game. Like, you seem like fun people, but I don't know about this.
Can maybe I'll join you guys, but let's play something else.
Right.
Cool. Okay. Any final thoughts on? I guess one question I've wanted to ask with all of the games that we review on the podcast is, what is if I want to use a movie term, if we're going to the movie theme, is what is the climax of the game? You know, I don't know if that's the right word to use. What is the soul of the game? If you had to boil it down to one thing, to be like, you know, why would somebody love this game?
Yeah, I think end of the day, there's still engine building, but just quick, and that then you have to survive or endure kind of the destruction, the dismantling of this thing that you just built, and that, you know, if someone had told me like that's what I'm going for, and it's a 30-40 minute experience, that's going to give me the right expectation.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, it's like, you know, you're watching a train wreck, and you can't look away, and it's funny. Like, I think that's how I would explain it to somebody. It's like, you have to, sorry, not that it's funny, but you have to be able to laugh at yourself and enjoy the fact that your train is crashing, and no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to stop it. You're just going to try to last longer than everybody else. And if you think that you can enjoy that and laugh at each other and have a good time poking fun at each other's trains crashing, and this is a game you'll enjoy. And I think that's kind of what it boils down to. Yeah, so you want to go with your final BGG out of 10 score?
Yeah, I personally would give it a 8.5. I'm pretty tough on my ratings. I don't, you know, it's a real rare game that gets a 10. A 9 is pretty close to awesome, great. So 8.5 for me is a pretty high score.
Cool. Yeah, for all the reasons I talked about, I'm a 7.5, so I'm a touch lower. You know, I probably still won't go out and purchase this, but I'll be more than happy to play it if somebody's like, let's play Moon Colony Bloodbath. And it's mostly like, I'm a big guy for visuals. Like, if something looks great on the table, that goes a long way for me. And player interaction is huge for me, and there's very little of that here. So for a game that doesn't look great, that has zero or almost no player interaction, 7.5 is a really solid score for what it's trying to do, and just for my preferences. So, you know, if our explanation of the things that we talked about sounds like really fun and hilarious to you, you're going to love this game. It's a hoot for sure. So definitely recommend it if you think that it's going to be a good time. And that engine building is fun. I enjoy that. It's just like not around long enough for that to be like a big hook factor for me personally, right? So 7.5, really enjoy it. We'll play it anytime. Just not one I'll rush out and buy and you know, and if I haven't played it for 6 months, like if I'm going over my buddy John's place, I might say like, hey, let's get Moon Colony to the table. We've got 45 minutes before so-and-so shows up, or we've got a little bit of time left at the end of the night. It does feel like a bit of a gap filler too, right? Because of its length. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I really agree there. You know, it wouldn't be my main dish, but it could really serve a nice, end of night. You know, a few people are leaving, but let's get one more in, or vice versa, the appetizer where you're waiting for a person still, and
It's
it's not going to run too long.
Yeah, and I'll say it'll be especially fun if you're with people with a good sense of humor. You know, if you're with close friends and you like to poke fun at each other and laugh and whatever, this is the type of game that will facilitate that camaraderie between friends. Let's move on to our main movie review, Mickey 17. So Mickey 17 was released in 2025, written and directed by Bong Joon-ho, based on the novel Mickey 7 by Edward Ashton, starring Robert Pattinson, Naomi Aki, Stephen Yeun, Toni Collette, and Mark Ruffalo. And the synopsis, as it is written on Letterboxd, is that an unlikely hero named Mickey Barnes finds himself in the extraordinary circumstance of working for an employer who demands the ultimate commitment to the job, to die for a living. So I guess like that is a very short synopsis, but what maybe before we get into that, have you enjoyed other of Bong Joon-ho's movies? Are you a fan? Are you familiar?
I am a fan. I am familiar with a few of his works, and I think they always have a lot to say about society. They always have a lot when it comes to kind of having humor, but also like kind of like this idea of the value of life and suffering. And I find there's a lot of like kind of like statements about like class structure and using, satire or, allegory to really get the story across. So, I think it was Snowpiercer that got on my radar first.
Same, yeah.
But I think now, I would watch anything just because I think there's great potential. And even if it's a miss, just like the game we were talking about, it feels like there's uniqueness. It feels like that someone's trying to like give an interesting experience. And so, when I first saw this movie, at the time I was a little skeptical. I was a little like, yeah, like how much can you really do with that? Which, again, I was skeptical of Bloodbath, but I think there's a lot there, and I probably should have realized that with the quality or caliber of actors that are involved in the project, and yet, it was unassuming when I first saw the trailers and thought, okay, that's the same guy. I'll give him a try. He was good in the past, and then this film, is one of the ones that really stood out when I think over the year now of what films kind of are memorable. I very much, even though I just recently rewatched it, when we talked about me coming on the show, even rewatching it, most of the scenes were pretty locked in my mind. Like, oh yeah, I know what's coming, and that is not easy because I love movies. I watch a ton of movies. I used to work at Blockbuster way back in the day. And when you work at Blockbuster, the biggest perk is you get 10 free rentals a week.
Oh my God.
And the whole point is they're like, hey, the more movies you watch, the more you can answer people's questions and recommend things. And as a gamer, I gamed that system. I actually worked there while I was in college. So I ended up sometimes taking 2 or 3 copies of whatever was the new hotness. We would get access to the movies like the week before they went on the shelf. So I would bring those to Res. I'd put them on the shelf, and I ran a Res rental. Where I would rent them out inside our Res and then use that money to buy more movies, and that grew my movie collection. So I'm all about.
Has the statute of limitations passed on that, or
no? Definitely, my DVD and Blu-ray collections were grown because of that job. So.
Very cool. Yeah. I'm a fan of Bong Joon-ho, and Snowpiercer was my first of his movies as well. And then I hadn't seen anything else until Parasite came out. And then when I saw that Parasite was nominated and was getting all this acclaim, I checked out Parasite and I'm like, okay, this guy's special, you know? So then since then I've watched most of his movies. And you're right. There's often a very present, very obvious social or political statement that he's making. And that is definitely not absent here in Mickey 17. No. But there's also another kind of staple is goofiness and silliness, which depending on the movie and the scene, the tone sometimes misses a little bit here and there.
Sure.
And I don't think that was the case in this movie. Cause this movie was straight silly from the beginning. Robert Pattinson's doing this fun accent and he's clearly having a ton of fun with this character. Same with Mark Ruffalo and Toni Collette. Like the three of those people are caricatures in this movie.
They're insane. Like
yes,
their characters
straight.
are so crazy.
Yeah. And so in some of his other movies, you get into a scene or a section of the movie that's a little bit more serious and a little bit more grounded, and the silliness sometimes still comes through. So I have a little bit of tone issues with Bong Joon-ho's movies here and there. But it doesn't, like, at the end of the day, I gotta say, like, I'm a huge fan of his movies. That's just one of the things that often shows. It's a staple of his, right? That often shows up. And this movie is one that is kind of like that tone throughout. Though there's some scenes that get a little bit more serious and whatever, it never, like, tonally, I think this movie, like, it works really well. But essentially, like, story wise, if we want to just give a little bit more of a synopsis of what's going on here, is that Mickey is basically owes money to, like, the scariest of gangsters on Earth. And there are spaceships that are leaving Earth, like huge, basically colony-sized spaceships that leave Earth. And Mark Ruffalo's character, who's basically an analog for Donald Trump. I mean, he's got to be. He even does a little bit.
It's too real. It's like,
yeah. And you know what? That might be one criticism that I have of this is that, like, the way things are going right now.
Yeah,
it's almost too real. And this movie was made, like, a year and a half, 2 years ago. Before, like, Trump was reelected. Yeah. So this would have been made during Biden's administration.
Yes.
So it's interesting to see this movie sort of come true in some ways. Not the sci-fi stuff and the space and whatever, but the way that the character acts and some of the things that he does and says, kind of is maybe a little bit too close to home, the way things are going right now here on Earth. So, for better or worse, I feel like he nailed that character, in a lot of ways. It's still very, like, even more, like, way more cartoonish and a lot more of a caricature than Trump is in reality. But it's definitely meant to be that type of person. And so, Mark Ruffalo's character is kind of I don't know what his title is on that ship, but he's more or less the president or the commander or whatever.
Yeah.
But he's hilarious. And his wife, played by Toni Collette, perfectly. I'm always a fan of Toni Collette. Anything she's in, I think she always does a great job. Yeah. But basically, like, he wants to leave Earth because he's like this. He feels like it's his only option. And the only way, he doesn't have any skills. He says, I don't have any skills. I don't have any, like, education. He's kind of a dummy. And so he volunteers to be an expendable, which, the staff, when he showed up to do that and hand in his paperwork to be like, I want to be an expendable, everybody was in shock. They're like, you've read the paperwork, right? Like, what this job is. And he's like, yeah, whatever. Like, I don't care. I just, like, if I stay on Earth, I'm a dead man. So I may as well leave and do whatever this expendable thing is. And I don't even think he knew what it was when he first signed up for it. So basically he ends up on this spaceship, and his job is to be expendable, to do super dangerous things, to test viruses, to test radiation, to do all kinds of things where basically he's expected to die. Any dangerous scenarios, and when you go to space, they're like, everything's dangerous. He's the one that volunteers and has to do it. And so he gets on this ship, and they do all the prep work of like scanning his body and scanning his memories, and setting it all up. And then, over the course of 4 years, I believe, that they travel to Niflheim, this like new planet that they're going to potentially populate and colonize. And over the course of that time, he dies multiple times, and he gets to the point where he's now Mickey 17. He's the 17th version of Mickey. And then we arrive on the planet, and then hilarity ensues and drama ensues. And, I guess, we're probably at this point going to be spoiling this movie. So if you haven't seen it, maybe stop now. And because that's like everything I've said so far is basically the premise of the movie, and we don't really have, I haven't really said anything else of like the main plot points. But yeah, if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's definitely worth seeing. It's fun. It's a blast. It's silly. Robert Pattinson's amazing. Especially if you like Bong Joon-ho's movies, check it out. So yeah, I guess at this point, maybe we can just talk about our general thoughts. And, I had a really good time with this movie. I think the main thing that I take away is Robert Pattinson's performance. I'm a huge fan of this guy. And the fact that he can go from playing Batman
crazy.
to playing this, like, he's one of the best actors of our times. And I think he's finally just now, over the last couple of years, maybe, or last couple of movies that the general population have seen, coming out of the like, oh, you mean the shiny vampire guy from like I think he's finally broken that mold or that expectation from people and be like, oh, he's actually like a good actor. Have you seen a lot of his he's done a lot more like artsy films and low budget character pieces and stuff like that over the last decade or so. Have you seen much from him?
I have. I've seen his older stuff, and it feels like he's trying to get away from the stereotype and the typecast. I can't say that I fell in love with much of his stuff until recently, like you mentioned. I mean, I am a huge Batman fan, and I loved his take. And this, I just, again, I think it's really hard to pull off humor. And when done right, you don't think about it. You just fall into it, and you find yourself laughing. But it's really easy to fall out of it, and then like that rhythm's gone. And I never felt that during this film. The whole time, I am into it, even though it is so weird. And you're on a ride, like, tripping out, kind of confused about what's happening, what's coming. And yet, like, there's a lot of things that feel right and feel like, it's not like Hamlet and I'm trying to learn the reference. It's right away you feel, the messages of like, the working class is used and abused, and that the rich consider the working class, that they commodify them, that they can use them. Like one of the scenes where they send him outside, and they're like, "Oh, the wire's already fixed. Like, why am I out here?" And they're like, "Oh, you're not really gonna like this, but actually, we just want you to step by step tell us about the radiation process, because you're going to die, and it's going to be a horrible death. But we want to check what time it was that you died.
Let us know when your skin starts melting.
Yeah,
let us know when you go blind.
Gloves off while you're in space. We can't see when your skin is starting to bubble." And it's just like, oh my goodness, like the power and disparity of that is like so in your face, but it fits because you're like, oh, they're disposable, they're duplicates. Like even just from like kind of an ethical line, because they can play around with the like, oh, well, he'll just come back. He'll be perfectly fine. He'll have all the memories. It like makes you less, human depend. Like you almost devalue life a little bit in a way as a viewer, because you think, well, he's just a clone, and yet like over time, because they make each of them a little more unique, and spoiler, like at one point, they print off Mickey 18 because they think Mickey 17 is dead, and you see even the differences between them. That starts to make the characters feel uniquely human, and now the suffering, it feels a little more painful and a little more personal, because now you're looking at each individual a little differently, and like you said, like it feels like a little bit of a depiction of our modern day problems. Well, I felt like, as a comparison, I don't know if you ever saw Idiocracy.
Idiocracy, yes.
It gave me kind of the same sad, silly vibes of like this ridiculous, over the top. That one's even more satire and more zany, but they both kind of like, if you don't laugh, you cry kind of moment. And so it gets its point across. And I think, that's why I also love like hearing comedians or whatnot, is that you can have truth kind of hidden in a joke.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And it's those things are even more apparent when you see the Mickey 17 and 18 interact with one another for the first time, and it's clear that they have, even if there's small differences, they are different people, and all of a sudden each one has value, and each one has, a quote unquote soul or an individuality or whatever. And when they're interacting for the first time, I thought it was fascinating that Mickey 18 is about to kill 17, and he says like, right, why are you afraid of dying? Like, you die all the time. He's like, yeah, but now you're here. Like every time I die, they just make a new me, but now you're here. So now it feels like when I die, that's it for me, and it's like, you wouldn't have thought of that. That's not something that was going through your mind. It's like a whole new concept. And this is what reminds me and like makes me think of where I think the movie falls and fails a tiny bit. Not fails, that's not the right. The movie doesn't go to the interesting places. And for me, what I thought was fascinating and what I was absolutely loving about this movie and where it was going was the like, what does it mean for two different clones of the same person who are changed? Like, what does that mean to each of them? Do they each have a soul? Do they each have their own personality? What do they mean to other people? Because he's been in a relationship with Naomi Aki's character for 4 years now. They have like a real bond, and all of a sudden there's two of them. What does that mean for her? And we do explore that a little bit. I
agree with you. Like, I wish they explored it more, because even things like, hey, you're hitting on my boyfriend. And it's like, well, they're both my boyfriend.
That's me. They're both, yeah. Yeah. So like when they were going through all of that and we were exploring for a short time, and that only lasted like 15, 20 minutes. Yeah. For a short time, we were exploring what it meant to be a clone. What does it mean? What is the expendability of these people, and how does that make them feel? And what does it mean in the greater society for more than one person to exist? And I'll play a clip here that I pulled from the movie, which was maybe my favorite scene of the movie. I'll play it now.
Alan Manikova.
I think it's him.
Are you sure?
There was this series of particularly brutal murders targeting homeless people, and only one eyewitness account, but it matched Alan Manikova's appearance to a T. The cops thought they had their man, except Manikova had a surefire alibi. At the time of the murder, he was getting his makeup done for a children's science show.
Come and help me with the red blood cells and the white blood cells, please.
But the cops had his number. When they raided Manikova's house, they brought 2 sets of handcuffs and warrants. They were on to him. Or rather, they were on to them.
Which one's Manikova Prime? You? Or you?
Yep, there were 2. One for the murder and one for the alibi. Manikova had printed another Manikova without the company knowing. So here's a question for you. Are they accomplices, or did one act under the other's orders? Are these separate and independent crimes, or were they one person from the get-go? They only get half portions in jail, or they get a full meal each? Police, legal experts, philosophers, everyone was stumped. But while Manikova 1 and 2 were both locked up in an interrogation room, another homeless man was brutally murdered. Lo and behold, Manikova 3. I think it was some cheap tabloid reporter who called them multiples, or some professor or something. Whoever came up with it, it stuck. And pretty soon the word multiples spread fear and contempt.
Yeah, so that whole idea of like there's multiples and did they all commit the crime? Is one of them acting like an alibi person still complicit with the crime? Do they, get a full sentence? Like, what are the implications of multiples of the same person existing in society? And how does that affect the person? How does it affect the people that are near that person? All of those ideas I thought were fascinating, and I was loving the section of the very small, short section of the movie where we explored that a little bit with the clip that I just played, and then with Mickey 17 and 18 and their relationship with Nomiaki, et cetera, et cetera. So I, at that point of the movie, was like, I was on the high, and I was like, this is so cool. And then they basically abandon exploring any of that for social commentary about leadership and war and colonization. And that stuff's interesting too, but it's well-tread ground, right? And I was just so enjoying that stuff that when it kind of stopped, it felt a little abrupt, and I was like, oh, okay, we're just like moving on from that. And that was my favorite stuff of the movie. And I found myself feeling the exact same way on my second viewing last night. I was just like salivating at all of the Alan Manikova stuff and all of the like multiples of Mickey stuff. And then it kind of didn't play with any more of that going forward.
Right. Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. And that tracks for me, because definitely my excitement and my, when I'm gripped in the movie, those are those maybe more unique, interesting questions. And like the big story I get, but because you can approach those big stories from a lot of different angles, that I agree with you. That was what was kind of unique and special about once you're talking about clones or multiples, and just the ability to get into what new questions they present. I think is pretty special. I also, maybe because I'm feeling a little cynical these days, but I also kind of like feel like they took their foot off the gas at the end and kind of like make it wrap up with a nice, pretty bow. And it feels a little, I don't want to say fake. I mean, maybe it, the appropriate answer is hopeful, but it, there's a lot of, they wrap up a lot of things really clean wise in a way that it feels odd on the pacing. Like you have this kind of like long story of the journey, and then all of a sudden it's like, it was funny, like the bluff and the whole threat and all that, but
yes,
there's something odd, and maybe it was just like almost like there wasn't enough time to tell the story. I would almost not. I don't know if it would lend itself as well, but for instance, I had the same kind of feelings with Snowpiercer, and then what I loved was Snowpiercer came out as a TV series, and I loved. I don't know if you watched the series.
I haven't, no.
I thought it was phenomenal. I mean, it got mixed reviews, but I loved that they could unpack it more.
Yeah.
And get into the nitty gritty. of, if you're going to talk about things like class struggle, then let me feel the little moments of oppression, and then these little moments of freedom and justice, and so that when those are bubbling up, by the time you come to a end story like that, I'm there with you. But I felt like I wasn't seeing kind of the hopeful ending all story long, and then all of a sudden it like swung. It just like absolutely turned around on me, and I need hopeful stories, but oddly enough, I didn't feel like it breadcrumbed that ending coming. It really just kind of was like, oh, right, he didn't get eaten by the creepers, so all of a sudden the creepers are good. Boom, and you're like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't like care as much about the story of what was going to happen between the creepers and the humans. I did really, really love the reveal at the end that the creepers were never dangerous and couldn't have done anything.
Like, that's funny.
But they outsmarted them, which I thought was great. Like that saved the ending a little bit for me.
Sure.
But yeah, just, and that is the problem with a ton of movies. Like when a movie has to stop building and stop being funny or stop, exploring, and then like have that third act and like actually go somewhere and end. That's a difficult thing to do. And so a lot of movies don't quite live up to the promise of the first two acts. And I think that happens here a little bit. I still think it's mostly successful and it works.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed myself. For sure. For sure. I still had a lot of fun with this movie, and I think the ending works. It's just like it teased me with this great questions and great stuff, and then sort of abandoned it, which kind of left me feeling a little bit cold. So yeah, that's more or less my big picture kind of feeling about the movie. One thing I do want to mention is, and I appreciate this in a handful of movies, and I said this, I think, a couple episodes ago when we were talking about, when I shouted out Avatar, Fire and Ash, is I love interesting technology in sci-fi form in movies. So there's a handful of little pieces of technology in this movie, and a lot of it's very grounded and very like the guts of the ship just look like a grimy whatever, and it's not like super fancy, and there's not really super interesting tech. But there are a couple moments, and at the beginning we see that they throw these like spheres, and then the spheres act like homing missiles and like jump up and become like a collar to catch Mickey. So I thought that was pretty cool. But more than anything, the piece of technology that I want to shout out is the printer, the 3D printer that prints Mickey. That is like, makes me laugh. I think it's a hilarious piece of technology. There was one moment when they were first printing him where, like when a piece of paper comes out, that moment too, actually. But when a piece of paper comes out of a printer, it hiccups, it goes like, it stops and then it goes back in and then comes back out again. And it mimics that with the human body. And I found myself laughing out loud, chuckling at that moment. And then, you're right. The moment where they forgot to put the stretcher there, and he basically just like falls out unconscious backwards, like, just flops on the floor naked. A couple of moments like that I thought were really fun. But that 3D printing body machine, the technology of that, I think is a hilarious idea, and the way that they present it fits perfectly in the tone and the comedic kind of like it's a great moment.
It was funny too, like the whole idea of like kind of like they have this melting ooze that's like their filament of human. And just like that. And then we just pipe that into the machine, and it's just like, and that makes everything. And then and
at one point we see through the side window very quickly, but we see the like a, what's the word that I'm looking for? Like a slice of, basically you see a slice of or a partially built human, and you see the organs as they're being printed, the organs and the bones and everything through the midsection of one of the characters as they're being printed, and I thought, oh, that's kind of a neat. And they didn't stay on it long enough for you to like, you know, it was just like a quick moment. It's like, oh, that's kind of cool too. So
the other part that I loved was the brick. That
yes,
they put down into it. Like, oh, we got a big computer down to a brick size.
And it's literally a brick. Like it's red with like it's textured like a brick. Like, what's the point of that? It's just to get a laugh. Yeah, it's just a stupidity just for, yeah. Anything else stand out to you that you want to mention before we wrap this up?
No, I mean, just in general, I think I am a sucker for sci-fi. Like, I love a good sci-fi story, and just like the scope always makes everything so much bigger and makes you feel small, makes humanity feel small. I think, I'm lucky right now, actually, and this whole year, I'm working on, a big sci-fi game. And the publisher is a pretty unknown. And when they hired me, we just started talking about all our favorite sci-fi, our favorite movies, our favorite books, our just influences. And while talking, like the idea was like, well, we all need these big game experiences because they help us lose ourselves inside them. And so I'm really excited because I all summer, if anyone sees me at a convention, I'm going to need playtesters. I'm going to be working on this big space game that will hopefully involve, I'm blurring ideas of time travel and different elements there, and we'll see what survives. I mean, every game I start with never looks like what it ends up. You assume and then it gets out of your head, and then it gets in front of people, and then it morphs and it grows. But just like that, I watched this movie, and I love that I felt like I was on this big epic journey. I felt like, it starts so great, this little moments on Earth, and then you're thrown onto this thing, and then all of a sudden you start to feel like it's normal to have multiples. You feel like what would you do with your multiples if you had to? And so maybe, even like little things like rationing of food or all these little bits that they put in the movie where they make it a statement about society, but also it's just like, yeah, but those are cool things to think about. Like, how would you do that? And how would survival of a colony work out, and like finding a new place, and then like, how do you make with, the indigenous? So I just think there's just like really great storytelling and lots of really interesting things to think about on these type of movies.
You make a really good point there about this movie specifically, is that like the world building is something that we haven't talked about. The world building and the production design is amazing. Yeah. It feels real. You get lost in that world.
Yeah.
And often movies don't feel like that, right? But it definitely, even all the stuff on Earth feels like a little bit futuristic and a little bit different than what we're used to, because it's meant to be in the future when, things don't go so well. So I think they did an excellent job with the world building, the production design, the ship, the planet, the tools, everything that they use, the technology, all feels like grounded and realistic in a way that could happen in like 50 years from now, 100 years from now, like, day after tomorrow stuff, not like way future, but like stuff that could be coming down the pipe.
And kind of an old future, it feels like a little bit.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. So let's wrap things up. Let's give our scores. So I'll go first. I liked this movie quite a bit. I think that the ending kind of pulls it down a little bit for me. If it had continued on the path that we talked about of really exploring what it, like the multiples thing, right? And what it means to the person, to society, et cetera, that stuff, I was eating it up. And if it continued on that, it might have been my favorite movie of the year, because up until that point, I was eating it up. And it was probably going to be a 4.5 or something like that. And it dropped a little bit. I have it at a 3.5, kind of inching up towards 4. I do think it's, I do think it's fairly special because it is unique, and we've talked about that with games earlier too, right? And when you're a cinephile like me and you watch so many movies, when something comes out and is really unique, it just really grabs your attention, right? So I'm probably closer to a 4 on this, but yeah, somewhere between a 3.5 and a 4 is probably where I land. I think there's lots of fun stuff here, lots of interesting concepts, and I mean, I just want to see the movie about what's the guy's name again? Alan. I forget the guy's name, but anyways, the serial killer on Earth, and that was able to make copies of himself. Series. Yeah, I want to see that movie. I think that whole section was fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I won't rehash it because I think we're pretty aligned on this. I would probably give this a 4 out of 5. I 3.75. Somewhere in there. Like I mentioned, I don't think they nail the landing. I think it's good, and I get why, and we need stories that are hopeful, and also not every story can be told through multiple seasons. A movie only has so much real estate to work with, and so it stands out as a movie to me that's unique, excellent world building, as you mentioned, and brings up some really interesting conversation. And I think it's memorable. I think it will actually be, I more than ever start thinking about movies that will stand the test of time. I think this will be in the conversation for a while, and that some of the things that you were mentioning, I think will, stand on the shoulders of this, that this brought those things up. And now the next director says, well, how can I jump into those things that you're mentioning? And so, I think it was a real solid film that I was happy to come back to. Kind of almost felt like I had forgotten more, and then when I started watching it, I went, no, it's still really fresh in my mind. So it was enjoyable to rewatch again, and then I'm just a sucker for sci-fi. So it's hard when done right to not be in that higher score for me. If you can do it well, you deserve a high score in my books.
Very cool. Yeah, if you like the idea of clones and what it means for, clones to live together in society, that kind of thing. There is a TV show that was not super popular called Living with Yourself. Have you heard of that one?
No, I don't.
Yeah, Paul Rudd clones himself, and
cool.
Yeah, pretty interesting. Very good. Not fantastic, but if you like that idea and want to explore that a little bit, Living with Yourself. I think it's on Netflix. I think you could just watch it on Netflix too.
I'll check that out.
So check that out.
Yeah, I will check that out. It gives me a little bit of vibes of Upload. I don't know if you ever saw that series.
Yeah.
So
I really enjoying Upload.
Those kind of topics.
Right.
I think there's a lot of really fun space for people to storytell there.
Yeah. Yeah, Upload's really good. And you mentioned Upload, which is basically a show about a place that people can send their consciousness digitally to sort of live forever. But it's in a digital space. And you can still visit with your loved ones that are still alive and stuff on Earth, digitally, I believe. And it does explore that quite a bit too. And if that sounds interesting to you, there's tons of that style of tech and sci-fi stuff in Black Mirror. If you've watched any of Black Mirror, amazing show if you're into that stuff. So awesome. This was super fun, Daryl. I'm so glad you decided to join me on the podcast. And maybe down the road we'll do it again if you're interested.
I would love it. I would love to come.
Awesome. So folks, if you're enjoying the podcast, take a few minutes, whether you're on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, whatever it is, rate the podcast, share it with a friend. We want to start, one of the big goals for the podcast in 2026 is to grow. My goal in 2025 was just to do it and just to get the episodes out there and have fun with it. But now I feel like I have a little bit of a system down. The episodes are rolling. I'm having a good time with it, and I'd like for us to just hit more eyes and ears out there. So take a moment to share the podcast. You follow us on Instagram, Dice Camera Action Pod. Any feedback, comments, or suggestions, you can email us at dicecameraactionpod@gmail.com. Yes, thanks again, Daryl. This was a blast, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Bye, everyone.